My father taught me early that love was conditional. It wasn't about bedtime hugs or praise for doing well in school. It was measured in titles, in how impressive I looked when someone important asked, "So what does your daughter do?" The words were always said with a smile meant to charm others, but the sting for me was unmistakable. Anything I did that didn't reflect prestige, anything that didn't make him proud in front of his peers, was wrong. It was invisible. Unworthy. I grew up watching my father, Dr. Marcus, the celebrated philanthropist and businessman, bask in admiration at gala dinners, conferences, and award ceremonies. And I, his daughter, was always the shadow in the background, careful, polite, quiet, never quite good enough. My achievements were ignored unless they could be used to reflect his brilliance. And so, when I told him I wanted to pursue a career in rehabilitation work, he called it a waste of talent and a shame to the family name. He didn't understand that I didn't clean messes, I cleaned aftermath. When a family lost a home to fire, leaving nothing but ashes and grief, I was there. When someone overdosed, leaving chaos and sorrow in their wake, I was there. When addicts chose recovery, shaking, desperate, and ashamed, I was there to guide them into light. I wasn't crawling in filth, I was restoring lives. I was repairing hope. Yet none of it mattered to him. None of it earned approval in his eyes. Despite the constant dismissal, I continued my work. I found purpose where he saw humiliation. The irony was cruel, but comforting. While he measured success by the glint of gold and the applause of peers, I measured it by the gratitude of the lives I touched. Every restored home, every person given a second chance, was a victory no gala could ever award me. Years of this quiet war shaped me. I learned to smile when he sneered, to speak softly when he raised his voice, to shrink when he loomed. I learned to keep my dignity intact even when it was ignored. And yet, part of me still hoped, sometimes irrationally, stubbornly, that one day he would see me, truly see me, for who I was and not for who he wanted me to be. That hope is what made me accept the invitation to the Platinum Gala, a glittering affair where the city's elite gathered to praise my father and his achievements. It was also a test I had to face. Would I let him belittle me in front of hundreds? Or would I finally stand for myself? I walked through the doors of the ballroom that night wearing my most confident smile, though my heart pounded in the cage of my ribs. The chandeliers gleamed like diamonds above, reflecting the laughter and wealth that had always seemed so distant from me. As I adjusted the strap of my dress and took a deep breath, I realized something terrifying and liberating at the same time. I had come to this gala not for him, but for myself. For validation. For proof that I could exist on my own terms in a world that had long refused to acknowledge my worth. I was tired of being invisible, and maybe tonight, I wouldn't be. Because sometimes, the strongest courage is simply showing up, even when you know the person who should love you most will try to break you in front of the world. The ballroom was a glittering sea of crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, and champagne flutes catching the golden light. Hundreds of elite guests, dressed in gowns and tuxedos, chattered in soft, measured tones, exchanging compliments and deals like currency. The air smelled of expensive perfume and subtle power, the kind of place where reputations were built and broken with a single sentence. And tonight, I was the target. My father, Dr. Marcus, stood at the center of it all, commanding attention with the ease of a man born into privilege. He had that effortless charisma that made people forgive his arrogance. I had spent my life orbiting his brilliance, hoping that some of it would rub off on me, that one day I might hear the words "I am proud of you" escape from his lips. But deep down, I knew better. He didn't see me. He only saw the reflection of himself. As the applause for one of his accomplishments died down, he raised a hand and the room fell silent. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the old, familiar anxiety that came whenever he turned his attention toward me. And then, in a tone dripping with theatrical charm, he said, "And this," he gestured toward me with a flourish, "is my daughter." My stomach knotted. I straightened, my posture rigid. I had learned to brace myself for his comments, but nothing could truly prepare me for what came next. "She works as a janitor," he continued, eyes twinkling as though sharing a private joke with the world. She crawls around in filth all day. Not exactly a real career, but someone has to do it. The laughter was instantaneous. It rolled through the room like a wave, drowning out my voice, my presence, my dignity. The sound echoed in my ears like a cruel symphony, each note striking the memories of years he had belittled me. The subtle insults at dinner parties, the dismissive sighs when I mentioned my work, the eye rolls when I tried to share my achievements, every one of them crystallized into this singular moment of public humiliation. I felt my cheeks burn. I could feel the eyes of the room on me, some filled with pity, some with amusement, and some silently judging. The laughter was worse than any words could have been. It wasn't just my father mocking me, it was the world laughing along, reinforcing the narrative he had so meticulously constructed, that I was unworthy, insignificant, a disappointment. But beneath the shock, beneath the sting of betrayal, something began to shift. A quiet, simmering fire rose in me, pushing back against the weight of years spent trying to earn approval that would never come. I realized, in that moment, that the humiliation he inflicted was meaningless unless I allowed it to define me. This was the night I had been waiting for, not for his pride, not for his applause, but for the moment when I could finally claim my own voice. The moment when the daughter he had tried to diminish would rise, not with anger or revenge, but with truth. I straightened my shoulders, feeling the heat of the spotlight on my skin, and I knew exactly what I would do. The laughter faded slightly as curiosity rippled through the crowd. Something in my posture, my gaze, signaled that the story was about to change. I was no longer the girl he thought I was. Tonight, I would prove it. I walked toward the stage with deliberate calm. Every step felt heavy and light all at once, heavy with the weight of years of belittlement, and light with the relief of finally taking control. The chatter and laughter of the room dimmed, replaced by curious murmurs as people noticed the unusual movement. My father's eyes widened, a flash of surprise crossing his carefully composed face. He had expected me to shrink, to sink into the background as I always had. But this time I had other plans. When I reached the edge of the stage, I extended my hand and took the microphone from his grip. His fingers lingered for a brief moment as if to stop me, but I held his gaze, unwavering. The room went silent, the chandeliers reflecting in wide eyes and raised glasses. I could feel every heartbeat echoing through the polished ballroom. And then, I spoke. "Interesting introduction, Dr. Marcus," I began, my voice steady, calm, and clear, carrying over the now quiet crowd. "Now let me tell everyone here who your daughter really is." Heads turned, whispers began, and the shifting of chairs broke the tension like a soft percussion in a silent room. I paused, letting the anticipation build, letting them realize that something unexpected was about to unfold. I rehabilitate homes destroyed by addiction, fire, and tragedy. I work with people who have lost everything and help them rebuild their lives. I crawl through spaces others refuse to enter, not because it is glamorous, but because it is necessary. I restore dignity where it has been stripped away, and I help people rediscover hope where they believed none remained. I looked directly at my father. His lips pressed together in a thin line, and the faint twitch of irritation betrayed the carefully maintained mask of superiority. I continued, my words flowing with controlled passion. "You call it filth. You call it a job unworthy of recognition. But the reality is this: I touch lives. I save lives. I clean what others abandon so that families can move forward. I bring light where darkness has lingered. And yes, I crawl in places you would never enter, but unlike you, I do not measure worth by applause or wealth. I measure it by compassion, courage, and the lives I uplift." There was a pause, the silence thick enough to feel it pressing against our skin. Guests exchanged glances, some shocked, some captivated, all realizing that the daughter they had assumed was a failure was, in truth, a force. "And so, Dr. Marcus," I said, handing the microphone back to him with the poise of someone who had won without anger, "you might want to sit down." A ripple of applause started slowly, then grew, filling the room. Some guests stood, others remained seated but clapped, their faces reflecting respect, admiration, even awe. My father's jaw tightened, his voice faltering as he tried to regain control of the situation. But it was too late. The power dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the girl he tried to diminish. I was the woman he had failed to understand, standing tall and unapologetic in the face of his ridicule. For the first time in my life, I felt the exhilarating clarity of self-recognition. I had claimed my voice, my identity, my truth, and nothing he could say or do would take that away. The applause started slowly, hesitant at first, then swelled into a tide that seemed to fill the entire ballroom. People who had just moments ago laughed at me were now staring with wide eyes, nodding in respect. I could see the surprise on their faces, the realization that the daughter they assumed was weak, unsuccessful, or insignificant was, in fact, a woman of courage, skill, and unshakable integrity. My father, Dr. Marcus, sat frozen, the microphone awkwardly still in his hand. His polished mask of composure had cracked. The controlled laughter, the practiced charm, all of it faltered under the weight of truth I had delivered. For the first time, he could not control the narrative. He had tried to define me, diminish me, reduce me to shame in front of an audience of hundreds, and yet the irony was delicious. I was the one commanding attention now. I was the one who held the room. As the clapping continued, I let myself breathe. Deep, steady breaths, savoring the rare, intoxicating taste of vindication that wasn't born from revenge, but from authenticity. I didn't humiliate him in return. I didn't shout accusations or call out his cruelty. I simply told the truth, and in doing so, I reclaimed everything he had tried to take from me, my dignity, my voice, my worth. I noticed the subtle shifts in the crowd. People whispered to each other, exchanging glances of newfound respect. Some reached for their phones, quietly taking notes of my words. Others smiled at me with genuine admiration. In that moment, I realized something crucial: my father's approval no longer mattered. It never had. The validation I sought from him had always been conditional, fleeting, and tied to his own vanity. The real proof of my worth wasn't in his eyes. It was in the lives I had touched, the people I had helped, and the integrity I had maintained despite his constant criticism. I turned slightly, taking in the ballroom, the chandeliers, the faces of strangers who now looked at me with awe rather than scorn. A sense of calm swept over me, a clarity I had never experienced before. I didn't need to win his approval, nor did I need to punish him. The ultimate revenge, the kind that truly matters, was living my life boldly, unapologetically, and on my own terms. Finally, I walked off the stage, the soft tap of my heels echoing in the polished marble hall. Every step felt lighter than the last. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The room had witnessed my truth, and that was enough. My father's disappointment, his attempts at public humiliation, and his shallow pride no longer had power over me. As I stepped out into the cool night air, the city lights flickering like distant stars, I felt a deep sense of freedom. I had survived his cruelty, transcended his judgment, and emerged stronger, prouder, and entirely my own. For the first time I understood that my career, my choices, my life, it didn't need his stamp of approval. I was enough. I had always been enough. And in that quiet, victorious moment, I smiled, not in triumph over him, but in celebration of myself. I had introduced the world, and finally myself, to who I truly was. And that, more than any applause, any recognition, or any revenge, was the sweetest victory I could ever claim.